federal judge has sentenced former LMPD Detective Brett Hankison to 2 months and 9 years in prison for violating Breonna Taylor's civil rights. That sentence came down just about 45 minutes ago, bringing an end to a case 5 years in the making. We have team coverage from downtown Louisville. Logan Perrone has been getting reaction from protesters, but we begin with Mark Stevens and what happened during that 4-hour hearing.
Yes, Don, 4.5 hours for the presiding judge to ultimately give Brett Hankison a sentence of 33 months in federal prison. Now, we don't know when he'll go to prison yet. The judge did not order him to surrender immediately. And in fact, Hankison's defense team has already said that they plan to appeal this case. So it is unknown at what point he will have to surrender himself to the Federal Bureau of Prisons. But 33 months for violating Breonna Taylor's civil rights. Now, this was not a guarantee. The big question coming into today was not only did you have the defense team arguing for a no prison term sentence, but in what has seemed to be basically what the judge called a 180-degree turn, the prosecution also was arguing that Brett Hankison should not serve a long prison sentence. They were arguing for, in fact, no prison time at all, giving him time served for the 1 day of jail time that he served when he was initially arrested and booked for this crime, and then just simply serve probation after that. The judge ultimately disagreed, finding that that would not be an appropriate sentence, and sentenced him to 33 months. I want to point out, during those 4.5 hours, when the arguments were being made that Hankison's actions, did not kill Breonna Taylor, which they did not, that his bullets did not strike anybody else, the judge pointed out that what the government began to argue in this case was exactly the opposite of what they argued to the jury when the jury ultimately convicted him, that the jury found that he did indeed violate Breonna Taylor's civil rights, that he used a deadly weapon, that he was acting as a law enforcement officer. It was so stunning, in fact, that during the actual point in time in the hearing where Taylor's family got to advocate to the judge, her mother, Tamika Palmer, said it appeared that there were 2 defense attorneys in the courtroom.
I think the judge did the best she could with what she had to work with. There was no prosecution in there for us. There was no prosecution in there for Breonna. So I definitely, I'm grateful for the judge for giving some time, because we could have walked away with nothing according to what they recommended.
And even though it's not what we wanted, we thought that he should have gotten more time. Yeah. We are grateful to Kristen Clark, Merrick Garland, and the Department of Justice, who had the courage for the first time in the history to bring federal charges against a police officer for killing a black woman in America.
Now, Hankison's family was also largely present in the courtroom. Several of his family members, as well as his friends, testified that he should only be serving probation. They asked the judge for mercy and grace and leniency. And I do want to point out, Hankison did make a brief statement in court. He apologized to Taylor's family, and he also said, with the hindsight of 5 years and what he's gone through, knowing what he knows now, he never would have fired his gun. Dawn?
All right, Mark, just quickly, there was a lot of people that were outside very angry from what I can understand, and I want you to address this if you can so people will understand. A lot of protesters who were a little angry that I believe the aunt and the boyfriend did not get in the courtroom. Do you know the reason for that or what happened? Can you address that?
Dawn, I'm unsure of which aunt. There were 2 aunts who did speak. I know that Kenneth Walker may not have been initially allowed into the courtroom. I can say this, it filled up incredibly quickly. I got here at about noon. When we were going into the courtroom, I couldn't get into the courtroom myself. I had to go to an overflow courtroom. I did not see Kenny Walker in that courtroom. I did see him when he did appear to give his victim impact statement later on in that hearing. So at some point he was allowed in, but I can understand the frustration for people and protesters seeing that it may have appeared to them that the government had totally flipped on them and wasn't even allowing them to testify. There was one moment where Tamika Palmer gave the judge a manila envelope of more than, I don't know how many victim impact statements, but clearly more than a handful, because the judge flipped through them. And the judge made note that she was upset that the Department of Justice hadn't provided that to her ahead of this hearing.
All right, Mark Stevens, again, down at the courthouse, the Snyder Federal Courthouse. We appreciate all your reporting there.